And we are live. Ladies and gentlemen, just give me a second whilst I figure out the configuration for this, as I thought I'd do a smart thing and dive into the deep end without any research whatsoever. And yes, for those of you who've watched the videos before, I do wear glasses. And just in case 2 or 3 people might accidentally comment on this video, I thought I should actually wear my glasses so I'm able to read your comments. Now, before I get into it, before I do anything, there's no Gary today. The reason there's no Gary is he's not feeling very well. As I said in the description, that is a word for hangover that I've never heard before. But we will move on. Now, before we go any further, I just want to quickly say that for all of you that take part in the predictions, if you have a look in the description, there's a link to a survey. And what you can use that link to go in and do your own predictions. It takes about 30 seconds rather than you guys dropping it in the comments. And then we can read out all the scores once they've all been collated at the end of the game week. Now, before we get into anything, as always, we just want to do a quick thank you to everyone, every single one of you guys who comments, who likes the videos. We appreciate every single one of you. We really do. So let's go into the scores for last week. Now, me and Gary drew again. It was 2-2 last game week. That brings the scores for the month to 30-26. So for the first month, I am beating Gary. So maybe that's why Gary isn't here this game week. He couldn't face the fact he's actually lost, so he's hid. But he's still going to have to do some form of forfeit. Let's get into our subscribers' scores. So going from bottom up to who won, Dan G got 1 point. Sam Newbold, who's a new person who took part, he got 4 points with 1 perfect score. Don Malone got 4 points. Reese Lloyds got 4 points. Neither of them got any perfect scores. S got 3 points with 1 perfect score. Carl got 3 points also with 1 perfect score. But the winner, again, second week in a row, it is Anthony, who got a total of 6 points with 2 perfect scores. So, again, well done, Anthony. So we move into the first game of the game week, which is Everton versus West Ham, which is taking place at 5:30 on Friday at Goodison Park. Now, last game week, Everton had their game postponed due to COVID, which is rearing its ugly head again. And I think they might have been looking forward to this one. In the last few game weeks, certainly against the bigger teams, they've actually been playing quite well. They managed to knock up wins against Arsenal, Chelsea, and Leicester. But they did, in their last game, get a draw against Burnley. So maybe it's just the best teams that they saved their results against. But that's what Man City are. They are one of the better teams. So perhaps an untimely postponement for them. For West Ham, Moyes, in the game prior, it did come out as quite negative. So I thought he started the last game a lot more positively against Southampton, and they created some good chances off the back of it. Certainly enough chances to win the game. Souček had that header, which we've seen time and again this season. He pops up into some brilliant positions, but he wasn't able to convert. And Ben Rama, perhaps the man who needed a goal more than most, because he hasn't been starting. He hasn't been in the starting 11. And that would have been the goal which maybe could have given Moyes a little nudge in the back and said, maybe you should start me some more games. But he did miss that. But I think overall for West Ham, I think it was a much better performance. And I'll be looking forward to the game against Everton. Now, my prediction for this game is 0-0. Guys, if you have predictions for this game, as I say, if you haven't already, get it into the link. And why don't you drop down a comment down there as well? Because at the moment it is very lonely with 0 comments. So thank you for nothing, everyone. Next game up is Manchester United versus Aston Villa at 8 p.m. also on Friday at Old Trafford. Now, the last game for Manchester United, the one against Wolves, they are the exact type of games you want to win if you want to be challenging for the title. Now, make no mistake, Wolves set up to frustrate Manchester United, and they did that for all of 93 minutes. They did it very well. Now, United didn't come close a few times, but in the end, they managed to get that goal. Now, it was slightly fortunate as it took a slight deflection, but the thing is, you need to create the chances to get the luck, and that's what they did. So, there's something about this Manchester United team. They just do not give up, and it was another 3 points for them. For Aston Villa, they played Chelsea. Oh, we have our first comment. Do you think Manchester United have a chance of winning the title this season? Yes, I think they do have a chance. Don't get me wrong, Liverpool look like the strongest contenders, and I think rightly so. And I think even if it's the fact Liverpool are the most consistent this season, but you can't rule out Manchester United. You know, they're picking up points and they're certainly within for a shout. For Aston Villa, it was a very good performance for Aston Villa, I felt, against Chelsea. But the thing is something we've come to expect from Aston Villa, and they almost got the win. It was an absolute thunderbastard of a shot that smacked the bar. But they will want to make improvements, though, I feel, for Aston Villa. Chelsea kept on being able to get down that left side of Aston Villa. I think that's something they want to improve upon. And to be fair to Chelsea, it was a very good cross and finished by them. But I would say I think it was bettered by El Ghazi's goal. I think it was a much better cross and a nuts to finish it, which always finishes well. My prediction for this one is 2-2. It's 2 draws in a row. It's not a good start, is it? Guys, if you're just joining us or if you're watching this at a later stage, as I said before, do get your predictions in the link in our description. So we move over into Saturday, and it is Tottenham versus Leeds. It's happening at 12:30 at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Now, Tottenham is another team who had their game postponed due to COVID. It was a Fulham camp who had the issue with COVID. I said that very accusingly there, didn't I? I think the break for Tottenham probably come at a good time for them. They hadn't won in 4, and it wasn't defensively that Tottenham were struggling, although they weren't great defensively. But I think it was attacking-wise that Mourinho's really going to want to try and improve upon, as the goals have dried up a little bit for Tottenham, and I think that's what he wants to really get going again when they play against Leeds, who is a team where I do think they'll get chances. But the problem with Leeds, though, is that they will also create chances for themselves. And, well, what better result to do that again than an absolute 5-0 rollicking of West Brom? And I think that's just what Leeds needed, because they got that 6-2 dismantling, and then they got a little bit plucky against Burnley. But that was the Leeds that we've come to know in the Premier League so far, that if they get chances, they will score a lot of goals. Did you know that was the worst defeat for Big Sam ever in the Premier League? I mean, I think that speaks quite volumes. The other thing I can't do is decide between which goal I actually preferred, whether it's Alioski's, Harrison's, or Rafinha's. All of them were absolutely brilliant, but maybe the last one just about. My prediction for this one is 3-2 Leeds. I think Leeds are going to win this one. I don't think Tottenham are going to sort out their goal scoring problems enough before that game. Next game up is Crystal Palace versus Sheffield United, taking place at 3 p.m. at Selhurst Park. Oh, Costa has been linked to Tottenham. Do you see this transfer happening? I should speak more clearly when I read out the question, shouldn't I? I mean, he would fit Mourinho's type, which is an absolute bastard, right? I think that's what Mourinho wants. I think there's that very famous quote from the Amazon documentary where he doesn't want smart people. He doesn't want dumb people. I won't use the word. He wants smart people, and I think Costa, he fits the bill. Whether or not Tottenham sign him, I don't know. Whether they have the capacity, whether they have the wage budget for it, but be interesting one to keep an eye on. So for Crystal Palace, I think this was the exact sort of reaction they was looking for after the Liverpool game, although it was a little bit belated. Crystal Palace created chances, although after the scare of the penalty. Oh, that wasn't English. Crystal Palace did create chances, although there was a scare when there was the penalty, although I think it was a good save by Guaita, although not a great penalty by Iheanacho. And it was an excellent finish for Zaha for his goal, but unfortunately they couldn't hold the lead. In the end, it was Barnes who came through for Leicester City to snatch a 1-1 draw. But I think overall Palace will be very happy with their performance. Maybe not necessarily the point, but I think it was a much improved performance, and it's something they really needed. Sheffield United, I mean, there's not too many positives for Sheffield United at the moment. They're still winless. They're yet to win in the Premier League. And Burnley clearing a goal off the line, that's the exact kind of things that happen to you when you're down and your luck is out. I think there's very few positives for them at the moment. Ramsdale made a few saves because he's been quite inconsistent this season, but it was a good game for him. He couldn't really do much with Ben Mee's header, but I worry a little bit for Wilder, which is such a shame, especially when you consider what they did to the Premier League in the last Premier League season. So I'm really hoping that they can maybe start with a win. But my prediction for this one, I think I'm going 2-1 Crystal Palace. Next up, it is Brighton versus Wolves, and it's taking place at 5:30 on Saturday. Now, usually Brighton fans, I think I get frustrated with Brighton because they play well and they don't get the results that their performance warrants. And against Arsenal, it was a much changed side, I have to say, first of all. And in that first half, Brighton played quite well, but you have to be fair to Arsenal. Something happened at halftime. Arteta, I think, probably really got into his team, and Arsenal absolutely changed the side. They come out the better side. They dominated the play, and it was a poor goal to concede for Brighton. They gave Lacazette, who, on his day, he could be an absolute lethal finisher, but they gave him far too much space in their own penalty area, and they allowed him to pick his spot, which he did. Brighton haven't won in 8 games now, so they'll be hoping they can start picking up all 3 points against Wolves. Wolves, they'll be disappointed that they lost the game against Manchester United. Not necessarily because they were the better team. I don't think they were the better team, but I think they executed their game plan absolutely down to a T up until the 93rd minute. They managed to frustrate Manchester United for the majority of the game, and they were able to carve out a few chances of their own. And it was a little bit cruel that in the end it was a deflected shot which gave Manchester United all 3 points. But I think it was a good performance by Wolves, in which it was they really stuck to their tactical plan. I think if they do that again, they might be in with a chance. But my prediction for this one, I'm going 1-0 Brighton. I'm sorry in advance, Brighton fans, because every time I go with Brighton, they let me down. So if it happens again, it's my bad. Next up is West Brom versus Arsenal, taking place at 8 p.m. Saturday at the Hawthorns. Now, Baggies fans, look, I'll do you a favour. I'll keep this short. It wasn't a great performance by you guys, and I think as soon as that own goal went in, you kind of just knew that it was going to be a bad day at the office. So I'm just going to leave that there. It wasn't a great game. I think you guys just need to move on to the next game. For Arsenal, Arteta stuck with his youngsters and they came through for it again. I think it may not even just be youngsters. I think he's picking players who he thinks fully buy in to his philosophy, and I think that's paying dividends. The first half for Arsenal wasn't great. It wasn't good at all. I think Brighton were the better team, but in that second half, Arsenal come out and they come out fighting. They created a lot of chances, and in the end, it was Lacazette who got the breakthrough, and it was a lovely, lovely finish. Although, as I mentioned earlier, Brighton did give him far too much space. That's 2 wins in a row for Arsenal now, and a clean sheet. This could be, maybe, have they turned a corner? Do you think Sam Allardyce can work his magic and saved West Bromwich Albion? Yes, I think he can, because he's done it so many times before. You can't rule him out at this point in the season. He's still got time potentially to implement his way and to keep them up. I think he's done it at a lot later stage in the season. So I think he can. Whether or not he will, I don't know. But he definitely has that ability. My prediction for this one, can't remember if I said it, but I'll just double check it. I'm going for a 1-0 Arsenal. That is right. 3 wins in a row, 2 clean sheets in a row, 1-0 Arsenal. So next up is Burnley versus Fulham, taking place at Sunday on midday at Turf Moor. Now, am I doing Burnley a little bit dirty here by saying that 1-0 win and from a set-piece goal is kind of like a Burnley special? Is that a bit unfair? What do you guys think? I'm not sure. But I don't think they'll care either way. 3 points is 3 points, right? To be fair to Burnley, they created quite a few chances for themselves and they eventually got the goal from Ben Mee. And I think defensively it was a very good showing from them as well. They were able to limit Sheffield United to mostly shots outside the box. So I'd say overall, it was actually quite a good performance from Burnley. They'll be very happy with that. For Fulham, just a reminder, their game was postponed. Their game against Tottenham was postponed. And I'd say before that postponement, it probably come at a bad time for Fulham. I would argue that it's probably the opposite to Tottenham because yes, they did draw their last 4 games, and it doesn't exactly sound brilliant, but the performances they put in for those draws was really encouraging for Fulham and Scott Parker. So it's probably quite a bad time for them. Add on top of that, I think they only conceded 2 goals in those 4 games. So, a few minor tweaks, they might be able to start turning those draws into 3 points. But my prediction for this one is 0-0. I'm going for another draw for Fulham. Next game is Newcastle versus Leicester City. It is taking place at 2:15 on Sunday. Now, Newcastle, let's just address the person who needs to be thanked for this point. Mr. Darlow, he made some absolutely wonderful saves against Liverpool. And in the end, whilst obviously it's a team game and Newcastle at times defended well, it was him he was the difference. And I think he deserves all the credit for that point. Liverpool were the better team. They were creating the better chances, but that's to be expected against a team like Liverpool. But to be fair to Newcastle, in the chances, they did have 2 counters. They did try to take those chances. They had a few half chances. Unfortunately, they weren't able to convert any of them. But an excellent point against Liverpool. But it's another tough game for them in the next game, which is Leicester. Now, to be fair to Leicester, they did rest some of their key players, and it wasn't the best game for Leicester, as they didn't create too many clear-cut chances. And I don't want to bring it up again for you Leicester fans, but I'm going to just do it this once. Iheanacho should have done much better with that penalty. I think maybe he's aiming for the top corner and just got it really wrong, but he put it at such a comfortable height for the Crystal Palace goalkeeper. He really should have done better. And I don't know what you guys think, all of you guys that are watching right now. Should Schmeichel have done better for Zaha's goal? Because, it came at him quick and it was a volley. He probably wasn't expecting it, but it's his near post, right? Let me know what you guys think. But for Leicester City, if they do want to stay at the top end of the table, they really need to be winning these types of games. But also, let's be honest, it's not as if the teams around them are winning their games either. So whilst I do say to them, you need to win these sorts of games, I do add on top, they're not the only ones who's losing points when they shouldn't. My prediction for this one, I'm going for 2-1 Leicester. They have been absolutely brilliant away from home this season. Next up is Chelsea versus Manchester City. It's taking place at Stamford Bridge at 4:30 on Sunday. Now, for Chelsea, they made quite a few changes coming into the Villa game, and that was following a bad run. And to be fair, I think the changes helped Lampard quite a bit. I think they created quite a few chances to score, but they didn't really have their shooting boots on against Villa. They didn't score when maybe they should have. And to be fair to Villa, they also created chances. I think in the end, a draw was probably a fair result. But I think for Chelsea, whilst they might not be too happy on paper with drawing with Villa, I think it was a much improved performance by Chelsea, especially when you compare to how badly they played against Arsenal. So I think they'll take the positives from that and move on to the Manchester City game. I think this match may be postponed with City. The Premier League haven't confirmed that yet. The Premier League haven't confirmed whether or not the Chelsea or Manchester City game has been postponed. But, they're letting people know quite late, as well as the teams quite late, whether games have been postponed. So we don't know yet. I think they leave it to the last minute before they actually make these decisions. But so far, officially, it's not been postponed. Speaking of postponements, City's last game was obviously postponed. It was supposed to be Everton away. Now, after an inconsistent start, in their last 5 games, I think they found their feet. They've gone unbeaten in the last 5 games, and they've only conceded 1 goal, although one of those games was that draw with West Brom, where they really should have won that game. Although, call me crazy, I actually think that Everton away was probably an easier game than Chelsea away. Now, I know I have a Chelsea fan in the comments, so he's probably going to bite my head off at that one. But I think the way Everton have played this season, they've actually been very good against the bigger teams, whereas Chelsea, not so much. So Manchester City might actually be looking forward to the Chelsea game more than the Everton game. My prediction for this one is 3-2 Manchester City. So we move on to the last game, which is Southampton versus Liverpool. It's taking place at 8 p.m. on Monday at St Mary's Stadium. Now, Southampton, the offside goal, it was a lovely, lovely move by Southampton, and it was really unfortunate that it was ruled out offside. But to be fair, it was, so there's not a lot they could do about that. But from then onwards, they weren't able really to create anything other than half chances. And I think they'd be quite disappointed in that because they dominated possession. But I think this is the third game in a row where they really haven't put in a great performance. As a matter of fact, it's the third game in a row where the opposition team has got a higher XG than them. And I think that's something that I want to try and create. But let's be honest, against Liverpool, who have been the best team this season, they're always going to be an absolute nightmare to try and create chances against. But there is a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel because Liverpool, obviously in their last two games, have both picked up draws. And I think I know why. The reason why Liverpool have drawn the last two games is because they wasted all their brilliant finishes in that Crystal Palace game. I've worked it out. That's what it is. They used them all up in that game, and then from then onwards, they haven't been able to finish anything. So they only have themselves to blame for that one. I think the Newcastle result might be worse than a West Brom one, but only just. I think they created more clear-cut chances against Newcastle, and it's clear-cut chances that, especially when you consider the players who had them, they really, really expected them to convert them. So I think they'll be disappointed, as I say, with both those results. But to be fair, they also had to deal with Darlow, who was in spectacular form. But my prediction for this one is 2-0 Liverpool. Now, before we wrap this video up, guys, if you want to get any of your questions or any of your comments in, I see another one in there. Salah's being linked to Madrid. Do you see that happening? Potentially. There's always been a draw to Real Madrid and Barcelona, which, regardless of how well English teams are doing, and if they're absolutely dominating all over Europe and winning every competition, because let's be honest, Liverpool are probably one of the best teams in the world right now, but there's always been this draw to Real Madrid or Barcelona, which is just undeniable. So I can believe that it might be something that if the opportunity is there, that it might interest him. But not this season. I don't think he'll go this season. If he does go, I think it'll be the season after. But that is it for my score predictions. As I say, guys, if you haven't already, quickly get your questions in. And when you take part in the predictions, do drop into the description and put your predictions in there. It takes about 30 seconds and all the games are already there for you, so you don't have to write them out for yourself. I have another question. If you was Frank Lampard of Chelsea, what would you do to revive their form that they lost? That's a difficult one because I feel like with Lampard, he's got all these brilliant players, which instantly puts a lot of pressure on you, but he hasn't found a system yet which works for them. And I think what Lampard has to do, and it's difficult because other than his time at Derby, we haven't really understood, kind of what Lampard's style is. But what he has to do, he has to adapt his style to the players he has. If you look, say, Havertz at his time by Leverkusen, he was playing as a, correct me if I'm wrong with that, because there's something in the back of my head saying it's not by Leverkusen, but do correct me if I'm wrong there. But he was playing as a false nine, and then he was able to drift wherever he wants, and he hasn't really had that chance that much at Chelsea. So I think he needs to try and develop a system which better suits his players, because at the moment, I don't think that's happening. Do you think Frank Lampard is in over his head at Chelsea? It's difficult to say, because if you don't give these young managers a chance, they're never going to amount to anything. But at the same time, Chelsea have invested heavily in his team, and that needs to be taken into account. So I would say at this present time, he's not in over his head. But I think come the end of the season, if they don't finish in Champions League spots, I think the job will be taken out of his hands. Right, guys, unless you have any other questions, I'm going to wrap it up there. I'm going to take that as a big fat no. Guys, I hope you have a much, much, much better 2021 than what 2020 was. It was, let's be honest, it was a bit shite. And hopefully we see you guys in the next video. Thank you very much for watching.